All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something pretty cool. You guys brought us an owner's manual.
Yeah.
It's for the Model
Oh,
F1
yeah.
Precision Screen Printer by Systematic Automation Inc.
Very cool. Very cool.
Now, for maybe those out there who haven't encountered a precision screen printer,
Mm.
what we're looking at is a machine built for some really fine detailed work, applying ink to, well, pretty much any material you can screen print on.
Right.
That material we call the substrate.
Mhm.
And what I thought was really fascinating when I was looking through this manual,
Yeah.
it even talks about adapting this thing. It's a standard model, but to print on things that aren't your typical flat surface.
Right.
And we're talking about cylindrical, conical, even spherical items.
That's spherical.
Yeah. There's some real engineering flexibility in this thing.
Oh, absolutely. And that's kind of what we're getting at here by diving into this manual.
Yeah.
We want to understand, how does this machine achieve that precision and versatility?
Mm-hmm.
Straight from the folks who made it. What makes it tick?
Yeah,
And what gives it, that really adaptable edge?
exactly.
Yeah.
Now, it is important to remember, though, this manual points this out itself. It's written for operators who already have a basic understanding of screen printing. So, we're not going to be covering
Well,
screen printing 101 here.
right.
We're going to dig into the specifics of this machine.
Right.
So, right off the bat,
Yeah.
let's talk about what makes this model F1.
Uh,
What is it at its core?
Yeah. So right out of the gate, the manual tells us this is a semi-automatic printer
Okay.
of the clamshell type. And you can almost picture a sophisticated printing sandwich.
Yeah.
You know, that's essentially a clamshell printer where the screen comes down onto the material.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fully automated, meaning an operator needs to be involved,
Mm-hmm.
but it's packed with features to ensure consistent and accurate results.
And, even from the standard features that it lists, we're talking about a heavy-duty micro-adjust table that allows for movement along the X and Y axes,
Right.
as well as angular adjustments. I mean, that's key for registration, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, the micro adjust table, you really can't overstate how important it is, especially when you start talking about, intricate multicolor prints where, a deviation of a hair's breadth can mean
Right.
misaligned final images.
Yeah.
And so this level of adjustability is what separates the wheat from the chaff when it comes to
Yeah.
high precision machines. Then you've got the squeegee holder and the flood bar, which, that's the heart of the printing process itself. And those independent micro height adjustments for those are key.
What's fascinating here is just, how much fine-tuning
Yeah.
the operator has available to him.
And they even have this precision tooling plate,
Right.
which I'm assuming,
Yeah.
contributes to the accuracy of the machine.
Yeah, you've got to have a flat, stable surface.
Yeah. For consistent printing pressure and image transfer. And the fact that this is ground to such a tight tolerance,
Yeah.
plus or minus a thousandth of an inch,
Wow.
really speaks to the level of precision that this machine is designed for.
Yeah.
And they highlight the fact that it's easily interchangeable,
Mm-hmm.
which adds to the versatility for different jobs.
And then looking at the standard controls,
Mhm.
I mean, the operator's really given a lot of control over this printing process.
Oh, yeah.
You've got variable speeds for the squeegee, for the flood stroke, adjustable print stroke length, even the carriage down speed can be tweaked.
That's right.
Why so much control? What's the point of all this?
You can almost think of it like fine-tuning an instrument.
Okay.
Different materials, different substrates. We mentioned different inks. Even different desired effects
Mm-hmm.
might require variations in speed and pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not just about adjustability. It's
Yeah.
really about optimizing inkryology,
Oh.
how that ink flows and behaves,
Mhm.
really on the fly. So, for example, a slower squeegee speed might be better for intricate designs.
Okay.
Maybe even for creating halftones, those areas of lighter and darker created with tiny dots to ensure complete ink transfer. And then the adjustable print stroke length
Yeah.
lets you really match the print area to the image on the screen,
Right.
minimizing wasted movement
Uh,
and maximizing efficiency.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then they've got this operating pressure adjustment
right?
with a gauge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be vital for consistency.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Consistent pressure ensures even ink distribution across that image.
Mm-hmm.
The foot pedal cycle start is a standard ergonomic feature, freeing up the operator's hands.
Mm-hmm.
And then the adjustable screen lift height.
Yeah. What about that?
That's going to impact how cleanly that screen separates from the printed material
Right.
to prevent smudging or sticking, which again is
Yeah.
a key aspect of print quality.
Especially
Especially
like on delicate substrates and things.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's that whole flood cycle, which is an interesting feature. It sounds like
Yeah.
you can pause, with the screen wiped clean
Yeah.
rather than waiting with the screen flooded with ink.
Right. So you're not
Yeah,
potentially, having the ink dry in the screen.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that could be useful for, preventing the ink from drying in the screen during those longer pauses
Yeah.
in operation, maybe
Mhm.
for specific printing techniques.
Yeah. And then they mentioned some key engineering features. Just right off the bat, they say machine tool quality and durability, which sounds good.
Yeah, that suggests a robust construction built to withstand continuous use.
Right.
And then they highlight stainless steel air cylinders and precision ground shafts
Mhm.
with high-rated linear ball bearings.
I mean, those are all the
Yeah,
good stuff, right?
but those aren't just technical terms.
Yeah.
They point to smooth, reliable operation,
Right.
reduced wear and tear over time. What's fascinating here is they're talking about components that are designed for
Right.
long-term high-cycle performance.
Yeah. It's 100% air operation,
Yeah.
which, no messy hydraulics.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So pneumatics offer a clean and often more easily maintained power source for this type of machinery. The manual even mentions the pneumatic system can't overload or burn out,
Hmm.
which is a significant safety and reliability feature.
Mm-hmm.
And the minimal carriage closing force for operator safety
Yeah.
is a thoughtful design element.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Then they talk about this,
Universal screen mounting
universal screen mounting.
and a hinged rear screen frame holder
Right.
with quick release mechanisms.
Yeah.
And that sounds like,
It's all about making things easier.
Right, definitely. Universal mounting means you're not locked into proprietary screen frames, giving you more flexibility.
Yeah.
And then those quick release mechanisms
Yeah.
for the squeegee and flood bar,
Yeah.
along with that hinged rear frame,
Yeah.
simplify the whole process of cleaning, changing screens, or making adjustments,
Right.
all crucial for efficient workflow.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
Let's look at the component breakdown.
Okay.
So, the manual's got these top view and side view diagrams with numbered parts.
Yeah.
And, we don't need to go over every nut and bolt.
Yeah.
But what are some of the key components here?
So looking at the top view,
Yeah.
the first thing that jumps out is item number 3, the XY rotational micro-adjust table. And again,
Right.
this is the bedrock for precise registration.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got the squeegee assembly 19 and the flood bar 20. So, with the substrate perfectly positioned, we want to make sure the ink is applied correctly.
Yeah.
And that's where the adjustable squeegee and flood bar come into play.
Yeah.
Right. And then from the side view,
Yeah, what do we see there?
you've got the print air cylinder, 25 AB, and that's what's providing that force for the squeegee to move across the screen. And then there's the carriage lift cylinder, 9, overhead cylinder assembly. And that's what raises and lowers the entire print head mechanism.
Right.
So understanding how those pneumatic cylinders operate is really key to understanding the machine's movement.
Okay. Now, they also mentioned this bearing bridge assembly 1.
Yep.
What's
Yeah.
that all about?
So that bearing bridge assembly is providing a stable and smooth mount for the print head assembly as it moves during that print stroke.
Okay.
And the linear bearings that it houses ensure that movement is, nice and consistent
Right.
and without any unwanted vibration, which can contribute to print quality.
Then we got these XY axis adjustment knobs, 5 and 6.
Right.
We mentioned the micro adjust table, but I mean these are what operator uses, right?
Yeah, exactly. These knobs allow for those really fine-tuned
Yeah.
lateral and rotational adjustments of the substrate table relative to the screen. Even a small adjustment here can make a big difference
Yeah.
in the final print alignment.
Okay, and then lastly we have the stroke limit actuator, 15. That's all about, telling a machine go this far for the print. Right?
Yeah. So that stroke limit actuator, it interacts with a valve on the bearing bridge
Mm-hmm.
and essentially tells the machine, when the print stroke is complete
Mm-hmm.
and initiates the next phase of the cycle. And so it's really a key element in controlling that printed area.
Okay, so let's get into the weeds here
Okay.
and look at these controls and adjustments in detail.
Okay.
So first up, squeegee control.
Right.
And now we've got this adjustable squeegee down limit. what's the significance of being able to control how far down the squeegee goes?
So that squeegee down limit is primarily about pressure control.
Okay.
And, for perfectly flat surfaces, the manual recommends just letting that adjustment knob bottom out and relying on the squeegee rubber's flexibility to compensate for,
Right.
minor variations. But, you were talking about printing on conical shapes.
Right.
Having an adjustable down limit, especially in conjunction with an optional pressure regulator, allows that squeegee to follow the contours
Right.
of the object without excessive force or loss of contact.
Right.
So you're preventing that squeegee from just deflecting and ensuring a more even print across that uneven surface.
Okay, so it can adapt rather than just being, force against it.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about the adjustable squeegee stop limit?
Okay.
I mean, the manual mentions it serves, like 3 purposes here.
Yeah. So number 1, it limits how high the squeegee lifts off the screen when retracted. About 1/8 of an inch is the rule of thumb.
Okay.
Just enough for clearance. Secondly, it acts as an anti-rotation device, preventing the squeegee cylinder from twisting during operation. And third, it can be used to tilt the squeegee, which changes its skew or its snowplow angle.
Squeegee tilt. What's the point of that?
So tilting the squeegee can sometimes help with, ink distribution if ink tends to accumulate on one side of the screen,
Okay.
or to improve print definition by not having the squeegee run perfectly parallel to the screen mesh. However,
Right.
the manual points out that the industry standard is often to angle the screen mesh itself by about 15 degrees
Okay.
when the screen is made.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a built-in thing you can't really mess with.
Right.
Okay. Now, the squeegee is held in place by this quick-release ball lock pin, which sounds,
Oh, yeah.
really handy.
Absolutely. It allows for toolless removal
Yeah.
and installation of the squeegee, so, saving time and effort during job
Yeah.
changes or cleaning.
For sure.
And the manual rightly cautions, that those squeegee tilt screws shouldn't be tightened so much that they bind the release pin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of those squeegee tilt screws,
Yeah.
those allow for localized pressure adjustment, right?
Yeah.
And the manual mentions letting the squeegee float.
Right. So, for most situations, the tilt screw should be retracted, allowing the squeegee to kind of pivot slightly
Okay.
from side to side, ensuring that nice even pressure across the print.
Yeah.
But, if you need more pressure on one side,
Right.
you can use those screws to bear down on that end.
Okay.
The key here is,
Yeah.
you got to adjust the opposing screw to prevent, again, binding of that quick release pin.
Okay. Flood bar control. The manual is really adamant about this.
Yeah.
The flood bar must be parallel to the screen. How do you even achieve that?
Right.
And why is it so important?
Yeah. So parallelism is crucial for ensuring an even layer of ink
Okay.
spread across the screen after the print stroke.
Yeah.
The manual actually provides a detailed, step-by-step process for using a thin piece of cardboard or plastic as a gauge.
Okay.
And then you lightly tighten the flood bar mount screws while using that gauge. If that flood bar isn't parallel,
Yeah.
you could end up with uneven ink coverage
Yeah.
on the screen, which is going to lead to,
Right.
inconsistent prints.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, there's also this adjustable flood bar down limit. That's all about setting the height of the flood bar
Right.
relative to the screen.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, the goal is to have that flood bar, close to, but not actually touching the screen.
Right.
So you want to make sure it effectively pushes that ink across the image area,
Right.
but you don't want to cause any damage or distortion.
Right.
And they even cross-reference this
Yeah.
with the flood bar mount screw adjustment, and, they highlight the importance of setting that down limit correctly.
All right.
Because otherwise you could accidentally rip the screen.
Oh,
Power up.
right. Yeah.
And then for those really wide prints, they've got the dual head option.
Yeah. How does that help?
The dual head configuration is often used for squeegees wider than 16 inches.
Okay.
And it provides more even pressure distribution across that length of the
Oh,
squeegee.
Okay.
And it also allows for adjustment of the distance between the squeegee and the flood bar,
Okay.
which can be beneficial,
Right.
for certain ink viscosities or printing requirements.
So it's all about control, really.
Absolutely.
Okay. They also have this option for squeegee pressure regulation.
Yeah.
How does that work in conjunction with the adjustable down limit?
So the optional regulator allows you to fine-tune that pneumatic pressure
Mm-hmm.
the air power,
Right.
applied to the squeegee cylinder.
Right.
It's important to understand, though,
Yeah.
that this doesn't change the physical downward travel of the squeegee,
Right.
which is still governed by that downstop limit.
Right.
Instead, it adjusts the force with which the squeegee contacts the substrate within that travel range.
So it's not going further down, it's just
Right.
pressing harder.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, off contact adjustment.
Right.
This is, kind of a fundamental concept in screen printing.
It is.
It's that slight gap between the screen and the material. How do they address that with this Model F1?
So off contact is really important because it allows the screen to snap away cleanly after that squeegee passes, and it prevents smudging.
Hmm.
And, they adjust this distance on the Model F1 using locking levers
Okay.
at the rear of the printer and a hand wheel at the top of that assembly.
Okay.
Loosening the levers allows you to turn that hand wheel to,
Right,
increase or decrease the gap within a 6-inch range.
Mhm.
Once you get the gap you want, you lock it down. The manual also mentions the front carriage post,
Right.
which, helps support the carriage and, importantly, allows for fine-tuning the levelness of the screen
Right.
relative to the table.
Yeah.
And they even touch on the possibility of slight screen tilting for very specific purposes, but caution against, excessive adjustment.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting how such a seemingly small gap
Yeah.
can have such a significant impact on print clarity, especially when you're working with
Wow.
delicate materials.
Okay. Then we got the print and flood stroke limit.
Right?
It sounds like shock absorbers are involved here.
Yeah, so they use shock absorbers to dampen the movement of the print head
Right.
at the ends of both the flood and the print stroke.
Mm.
And the position of these shock absorbers, which are clamped to the carriage shafts, determines the effective travel distance of the squeegee and flood bar. It's essentially telling the machine,
Okay.
this is where you start and stop printing.
Right.
And they highlight the fact that, both must travel completely beyond the image area on the screen to ensure a clean print and proper ink flooding.
Mm-hmm.
And then they outline the adjustment procedure, stressing the need to
Right.
secure the positions once you set them.
All right. And then finally is that the carriage lift down speed adjust.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as a valve, right? Just controlling how fast that print head goes up and down.
Yeah, a simple valve with a chrome-plated knob on the carriage lift cylinder allows you to adjust the airflow and therefore the speed of the carriage movement. And proper adjustment here prevents abrupt motions and contributes to smooth and controlled operation.
Okay. Now, let's talk about using this thing.
Okay.
The manual, briefly describes the standard operating cycle for printing on flat substrates.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk us through that?
Certainly. So with the flood hold off, the machine starts with the carriage up, the print stroke forward, the flood bar down, and the squeegee up. When that foot switch is pressed, the carriage lowers. Once it reaches the bottom, the air pressure shifts, initiating the print stroke, and the squeegee moves down to contact the screen. When the print stroke is complete, a limit switch is triggered, which reverses the airflow, lifting the carriage back up to that initial position.
And so for doing, the cylindrical substrates, how do you set that up?
So if the F1's equipped with the optional cylindrical printing kit,
Yeah.
the setup changes significantly.
Okay.
The squeegee head slide remains stationary, and the rear screen frame holder is allowed to move, effectively rolling that cylindrical object
Okay.
under the squeegee. So the shock absorber plates are repositioned
Right.
to hold the print head slide and to define the screen movement. The switch on the squeegee head slide needs to be disengaged, while the switch on the rear screen frame holder
Okay.
should only be activated at the end of the stroke. So for someone looking to print directly onto, say, a promotional water bottle,
Yeah.
this setup would be key.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of precision can be expected on a curved surface compared to a flat one?
Yeah.
The manual suggests it's designed to maintain high accuracy even on cylindrical items,
Mm-hmm.
although very intricate designs on sharply curved surfaces might still present challenges.
Okay. Now, obviously, no machine operates flawlessly forever. So they do have a section in here about basic maintenance. What are the key takeaways there?
Regular maintenance is really crucial.
Yeah.
And the manual highlights, the need to close the main air valve before you start working on the filter or lubricator assemblies. Draining accumulated liquid from that air filter bowl
Mm-hmm.
and cleaning or replacing the filter element
Right.
are essential for clean and efficient air supply. You got to maintain that oil level.
Right.
In a lubricator, use the right type of pneumatic lubricant.
Mm-hmm.
That's all important
Yeah.
for the longevity of those pneumatic components. The initial drip rate for the lubricator
Mm.
is suggested at 3 drops per minute. And they caution against using solvent-based cleaners
Right.
on plastic and rubber parts because
Uh-oh.
that can cause damage. For machines with vacuum pumps,
Okay.
that dust filter needs to be emptied regularly. Finally, those hardened stainless steel shafts should be kept clean and free of ink, but they don't require lubrication.
Okay. And, when things do go wrong, they do have a nice troubleshooting section in here.
They do.
What are some of the key insights from that section?
So the troubleshooting guide
Mm-hmm.
really points to air supply issues as a frequent culprit
Okay.
for various problems.
Yeah.
Like, if the carriage is not rising or lowering,
Right.
or if the operation is just slow,
Yeah.
that could be insufficient air pressure, a dirty air filter, or a crimped airline.
Right.
Limit switch malfunction
Yeah.
is another potential cause for the carriage not operating correctly or the squeegee and flood bar not alternating.
Yeah.
They also talk about, checking for restricted exhaust flow.
Right.
And in more serious cases, worn cylinders.
Yeah. Yeah.
For a printhead that just won't budge,
Yeah.
they suggest checking for obstructions in the airlines, maybe incorrect speed settings.
Mm.
And if the printhead travels forward but doesn't retract, the position of the shock absorber might be interfering with the air valve actuation. So it sounds like a systematic approach to
Yeah.
checking those pneumatics and the limit switches
Right.
is really key to diagnosing
Right.
most issues.
Yeah. So, this Model F1, even in its standard configuration, seems pretty versatile.
Oh, it is.
But they also list a bunch of options.
They do.
What are some of the more interesting ones?
So there are quite a few that speak to its adaptability.
Okay.
Obviously the cylindrical printing kit we mentioned is a big one.
Right.
They offer an automatic ink dispenser,
Okay.
which, would automate a repetitive and often messy task.
Yeah.
They've got an adjustable squeegee angle option
Uh-huh.
for finer control over ink transfer. Vacuum tables in various sizes would be essential
Mm-hmm.
for holding down flexible or thin substrates securely.
Right. So if you were consistently printing on, thin films or something,
Yeah.
that would be a must-have.
Absolutely.
Right.
The vacuum table option directly addresses
Right.
the challenge of keeping that flexible substrate nice and flat and stable
Right.
during the print.
Okay.
And then the dual print head option that we talked about,
Yeah.
further enhances control for those wider prints. And then they've got an optical registration system,
Yeah, that sounds so.
which suggests the ability to align prints
Yeah.
with, with pre-existing marks on the substrate with high accuracy.
Yeah.
So for, applications requiring perfect alignment over multiple passes,
Right.
like, adding a varnish layer to a pre-printed design,
Mm-hmm.
that system would be invaluable,
Right.
essentially giving the machine eyes to precisely position the screen.
Yeah, and they even have, options for specific applications, like
Yeah.
pen printing fixtures,
Right.
different cylindrical tooling.
And that just speaks
That
to
really does.
how this core machine can
Yeah.
be tailored for
Yeah.
a whole range of needs.
It's amazing. So you could, with this relatively standard machine and an add-on,
Right.
you could go from printing posters
Yeah.
to decorating a cylindrical drinking glass.
Right. Exactly.
And that's, that speaks volumes about its adaptability.
Absolutely. And they even list, different vacuum tables, riser blocks for taller products.
Mm-hmm.
They even have the ability to upgrade to an 810 printer
Wow.
with a different control panel,
Okay.
which just,
Yeah.
underscores that modularity
Mhm.
and that potential for growth
Yeah.
with this platform.
Okay. And lastly, there's a section in here for replacement parts, which is always good to see.
Yeah.
That they list those out clearly.
Right.
Anything that stood out to you on that list?
Well, a lot of those parts relate directly to
Yeah.
the components we've discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Air cylinders, filters, lubricators, various valves, even those nylon shock absorbers.
Right.
And, having those replacement parts available
Right.
ensures that operators can, keep those machines running
Right.
and minimize downtime.
Yeah.
The quick release ball lock pen is also listed,
Mm-hmm.
highlighting its role as, a potentially replaceable
Yeah.
wear item.
Well, this has been a really, insightful look into this
Yeah.
Model F1 precision screen printer. It's clear from the owner's manual that, this is a highly adjustable and versatile piece of equipment
It is.
designed, for precision and adaptability across, whole range of printing tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And its reliance on, pneumatic operation and its modular design, it seems to offer both reliability and ease of use for operators.
Yeah, and that, the level of detail within the manual
Right.
really speaks to the manufacturer's commitment to ensuring that operators understand and can maintain their machinery
Oh,
effectively.
right.
There's a wealth of information here for anyone looking to, get the most out of their
Yeah.
screen printer.
So, I mean, considering, the range of options
Yeah.
and the core mechanics that we've gone over, I
Yeah.
mean, it really makes you think about
Yeah. It really does.
what kind of innovative, or specialized printing applications are even possible